Welcome to the Josh Button Podcast, where we discuss health, wellness, and outliers from society. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Josh Button Podcast. Today, I'm joined by an amazing author. I'm fascinated by the premise, but also I really look forward to picking your brain on this full subject. You are writing another book now, but you're author of Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. I believe the next book you're working on is Breast Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. And then you're going to follow it up with a series of different cancer issues that I guess a lot of the world is facing now, not just here in the United States. It's a chronic issue. Tell us how you came about the research, how you came about this knowledge in the first place. Give us your history and tell us a little bit about your books.
Okay. Well, thank you for hosting me, Josh. Very kind of you. Absolute pleasure to be on your show. I started my journey over 2 decades ago. I had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer. So some context, I live in India. My home is in Bombay. I had a friend in Bombay who was diagnosed with cancer, and there's no social healthcare in India. If you get any form of diagnosis, if you can't afford to pay for it, then basically you're out of luck, and they'll just send you on your way. So long story short, I raised the money to fund her treatment, and she had 3 rounds of chemo and she died, right? But when she started medical treatments, whilst they said she had cancer, and I don't remember exactly what type of cancer she had, but she looked fit and fine, right, before she went into hospital. And unfortunately, in my ignorance and with the benefit of hindsight, stupidity, I strongly encouraged, borderline forced her to take treatment. She used to message me from hospital saying, "Danny, I don't know what these doctors are doing, but it feels like they're putting poison in my veins." And of course they were. Chemotherapy is mustard gas, and when you put mustard gas inside your body, it kills you, and it killed her. So I was devastated that I both financed her treatment and ensured her compliance to the treatment as well. So when she died, I swore that I would search to the ends of the earth to find a better solution to cancer. And I'm now more than 20 years along that journey. I was in my mid-30s when I started the journey. I was working in asset management and venture capital. So I had no background in medicine or alternative or conventional. I just started on the journey to try and find a better way to solve a problem that nobody else seemed to be looking for. So that's where it started. I sort of groped around in the dark for the best part of a decade until 2012, where I had a spontaneous cathartic healing experience where my body was riddled with golf ball size knots in my calf muscles, my thighs, my arms, my back, and I'd been in physio. At the time, I was running ultra marathons. I got in the Guinness Book of Record running ultra marathons in 2010. I had a bit of a bad running habit, and in 2012, most of 2012, I could barely walk, let alone run. I was essentially crippled with these golf-sized knots in my body. Some backstory: my wife is an American diplomat, and when she served in Bombay, and her next posting was in Santiago de Chile. And when the night before she was due to leave Bombay, I went over essentially to end the relationship, because who has a long-distance relationship between Bombay and Chile, right? And we had a long, difficult discussion. We'd become soulmates, right? So it was really quite a difficult situation. And at the end of the discussion, we decided not to terminate the relationship. And when I woke up, that was on the Friday night. And when I woke up on the Saturday morning, all of the knots that had been in my body for 6 months magically disappeared overnight. And I'm like, oh my God, wow, what just happened? So that was my first spontaneous cathartic healing experience. And I've essentially spent the last 13 years, since 2012, studying mind-body healing modalities. And along the journey, basically found a body of buried medical research carried out by a genius German medical doctor called Dr. Ryke Geerd Hamer, who essentially unraveled the biological code and found the life cause and the solution to every health problem on Earth. And his medical discoveries essentially have been buried because if they were allowed to surface, he estimated that 95% of all established healing modalities, whether they're conventional or alternative, would be put out of business if his medical discoveries were allowed to surface. So I'm in the process of writing a 500 plus book series, one book on each disease. And that's not only cancer, that's everything: cancer, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, mental constellations, depression, you name everything, right? He essentially unraveled the solution to all health problems. So I'm writing a book series on his medical discoveries and the last 13 years that I've gone through testing those medical discoveries on myself to make sure that they are the real deal. And indeed, they are the holy grail of health and wellness. So I'm now starting the journey of getting that information out to the masses so that they can do their own investigation of those medical discoveries, in a nutshell.
Yeah. So give us a little background. Are these diseases that we are addressing real? Are they just symptoms that we're putting labels on? Are they stress-induced across the board?
If the easiest way to frame this, Josh, is to look at the experience that this doctor went through. Right. So in 1978, Dr. Hamer's 19-year-old son was shot and murdered. Right. It was reportedly accidentally shot, had 17 surgeries, and died from the gunshot wounds and the surgeries. 2 months after Dr. Hamer's son died, he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of a very rare testicular cancer called a testicular teratoma, with metastasis to the stomach. Okay, now at the time, because he was a traditional medical doctor, he was what they call an internist, which is basically a medical researcher. But at the time, he knew no better. He had surgery. He had one testicle removed and part of his stomach and the lymph glands in his stomach removed. He couldn't help thinking that he was in his late 40s, Josh, right? And he got to his late 40s and he was a healthy guy. And all of a sudden, his son gets shot and murdered. And 2 months later, he gets an aggressive form of cancer on a reproductive organ. Okay. And he's like, that's strange. Can't be a coincidence, right? I mean, according to our current knowledge of cancer, it's a lottery, right? Oh, bad luck. Yeah, you got cancer. It sort of falls out of the sky and it has no known cause, right? Well, for him, he didn't buy that argument. It's like, how can it be? I've just lost my son, and 2 months later, I get cancer on a testicle. Anyway, fast forward 39 years of research with over 50,000 patients he worked with directly, and what he learned is that the tumor that he got on his testicle basically was functional tissue, and it had a biological purpose of increasing his sperm and testosterone levels so that he had a better chance of getting his wife pregnant so he could replace the child he just lost. So that was his insight. And once he understood the link between a life crisis, a trauma, and how the body was. So let's put it into a different frame, right? Imagine you're driving your car on the road, right? And you see a danger ahead of you on the road. right? You've got two choices, right? You can either put your foot on the accelerator and bypass the danger, or you can put your foot on the brake and you can stop before you reach the danger, right? Basically, cancer is the accelerator and the brakes of our vehicle called our body, right? So in Dr. Hamer's case, nature put its foot on the accelerator and increased the size of his testicle so that it could increase his sperm and testosterone production. So he had a greater capacity to be able to get his wife pregnant to replace the child he just lost. Once he understood that fundamental link between a life crisis, an unexpected life crisis, and then the biological response in that situation, then essentially he unraveled the life cause and solution to every change in our biology. So whether you have a runny nose, a sore throat, an acid reflux, or a cancer, an arthritis, or a Parkinson's disease, or anything, is all part of a survival biological program that has a biological purpose and a biological function. And when you can connect the dots between what's going on in your life, then you understand I live in a world where there is no such thing as disease. Every time there is a change in my biology, I know what's going on in my life. I know from Dr. Hamer's research how that triggers changes in my biology, and I know how to solve that problem, either with a real life resolution to that conflict or by using some neat tricks I've learned along the way. But in my world, Josh, there is no such thing as disease.
Interesting. So I've come across different researchers who had different opinions about some of these things. And one of the ones that comes up a lot is a maladaptation. So, and even in response to a trauma,
That's
there
right.
was one doctor in particular that I spoke with who said, there is a common theme with most of the people that have diabetes as adults. And that is there was some traumatic event as a precursor to them developing this diabetes. So what you're describing here is an adaptation, but with a positive intention almost, with a remedy to a situation that, as external as it may be, and it's trying to remedy it internally. So would everything else fall in line with this, or are there maladaptations that we're witnessing because of trauma as well?
In our lifetime, Josh, nature will never make a single mistake. No mal. There are adaptations. So let's take diabetes, right? High blood sugar. According to Dr. Hamer's research findings, high blood sugar is what we would call dry powder, okay? What is dry powder? If you've ever shot a gun, right? You have dry powder, right? So when you are preparing to get into a fight, and that can be mental arguments, you're sitting there preparing to go and have a fight with your partner or your boss or anybody, right? So you're planning the fight and preparing all of your mental arguments, right? Now, in our evolutionary developmental process, and still in nature today, if you look at pack animals in nature today, a fight was a fight to the death, right? If I'm the beta and I'm going to challenge the alpha in a pack, then it's a fight to the death, right? Our biological systems are wired in that evolutionary environment. And if I'm going to get into a fight, what do I need ready when I get into that fight? I need energy, right? So as soon as I start those mental arguments, then basically what nature's going to do is it's going to pull back the insulin and it's going to flush my blood sugar and my sugar full of blood so that once I get into the fight, sugar can be deployed into my muscles so that I have the necessary energy to win the fight and survive, okay? So if you don't want diabetes, stop preparing to fight and then your problem is solved. Simple as that.
So we're talking about people that are kind of functioning daily in fight or flight.
Yeah, I mean, the type of lives we live today, Josh. I mean, it's constant conflict, right? And that it's not only constant conflict in the workplace, it's constant conflict at home. And because the part of the issue here is because we do not understand cause and effect relationships. If I knew that if I spend my entire time preparing to fight, that it would push my blood sugar levels up, right? Because my survival evolutionary system is preparing me for when I actually get in. The problem is most of the times in today's world, right, we don't actually get into the fight, right? It's all mental arguments. It's no longer, fight to the death, as it was in our evolutionary process. So we don't even use the sugar that's pushed into our blood, right? If I knew every time I was sitting there with mental arguments preparing to go and, fight with my wife, that would send my blood sugar through the roof. If I didn't want high blood sugar, I would know that all I'd have to do is stop preparing for those fights all the time. And once I can make those connections between challenges I face in life and how it alters my biology, and I can alter my behavior in order to be able to address and resolve those issues, right? That's all it is.
Yeah, so I've had a really good experience with individuals who are in the condition in which you're speaking, when every day they're going to the same job where they encounter this, where their sleep is off and they encounter this just from waking and doing normal daily activities. But then they do something like a cold plunge, like an ice bath, and it takes their state to a different place, and they are able to relax in a way that they're not normally able to. So is that the modality in which you would recommend for people that are walking around with high blood sugar, with diabetes, or whatever this situation is specific to them? How do they come back under control? How do they escape fight or flight?
So, I mean, the jumping in a cold bath is definitely a solution, right? But you're still only addressing the symptom of the problem, right? Yeah. These medical discoveries in 20 years of being down this rabbit hole is the only causal modality that I've been able to find that gives you the ability to identify the life cause of a problem with a sniper's rifle, right? So, I mean, in business, we're taught on day one that you can never solve any problem in business by addressing the symptom of the problem, right? Because if you address the symptom of the problem will just keep returning, okay? Those same rules apply to our health. If you, as this example we're discussing, if you do not want high blood sugar, the cause of the problem is the mental arguments that you're getting into on a daily basis that's triggering the biological response of your body preparing for you to get into a fight to the death. If you don't want high blood sugar, then you have to stop getting into those mental arguments and fighting on a continuous basis. And that is it. You want to go and jump in a cold bath? Knock yourself out, right? But it's still only addressing the symptom. Until you can learn to address the cause of a problem, it will continuously return, which is why we live. I mean, what we all know that conventional medicine is a system of symptomatic treatment, right? If you get a headache, you take a tablet, right? If you get a fever, you take an aspirin or something, right, to bring down the fever, and so on and so forth, right? Now, it doesn't address the reason why you got a headache or the reason why you got a fever or a bad stomach or or anything, right? All it does is address the symptom of the problem, okay? What we don't realize is that the vast majority of established alternative treatment modalities, whether it's homeopathy or whether it's chiropractors or whether it's nutritional healing or whether it's even emotional healing modalities like the Bach flower remedies in the UK, still systems of symptomatic treatment. You're just treating different symptoms differently. If I'm using an emotional healing modality, I'm addressing the symptoms of the emotions. Okay? I'm not in a chiropractor who's addressing the symptoms of the structure. The homeopathy is addressing the symptoms of the environment of the symptoms. No, but none of these modalities, if I have diabetes and I go to an emotional healer, he's going to say, you got stress, guilt, this, that, whatever, right? He's not going to sit there and say, the problem is that you're fighting with your wife every day or your husband every day. You need to address the problem, stop fighting, right? Because they all have their tinctures and their remedies and stuff to treat symptoms, right? You can never solve any problem by addressing symptoms. It will keep coming back. It's not until you understand the cause of a problem and you address the cause of each of the issues that changes your health that you can permanently solve the problem. And none of the modalities, whether it's conventional medicine or alternative medicine, that are currently established are causal in nature.
So do we get to the root of the issue with a combination of these things that make us aware of what's going on? So with like a somatic practitioner, it can get you in tune with kind of what your potential buried trauma is, get you to maybe address certain things in your thought process and being open to what's going on. Are you actually going to become conscious of what's going on through any of these things? Can they point you in the right direction?
No, none of the. I've been. I'm not a doctor, right, Josh? I'm not a medical doctor or a naturopath, right? I'm just being interested in how my body functions and how I fix it when it goes wrong, right? The only causal modality that can tell me if I get a cold or I get a runny nose or I'm sneezing or if I've got a sore throat or if I've got a cancer or I've got a bad back, I've got a headache. What is it? What event is it in my life that has caused a change in my biology? Okay. Dr. Hamer's modality, which when it was first developed was known as Germanic New Medicine. He sadly passed away in 2017. About 10 years before he passed away, he changed the name of the modality to, in German, it's called Germanische Heilkunde. The closest interpretation from that in English is called Germanic Healing Knowledge. Okay, this is the only modality that I've been able to find. Maybe there are more, right? Maybe there are modalities around that are causal in nature that I haven't found. There are elements of Chinese medicine that causal, but from what I've studied of it, it's still causal at 40,000 feet. I've not found a second modality that can tell every cell in your body why it changes, what life experience changes it, and how you fix it, right? So this modality developed by this German doctor is the only modality I've found in 20 years of looking, right? So it's not as if I haven't spent time hunting, but this is the only modality I found that gives me that knowledge, right? That ability to understand if I get a runny nose, why have I got it?
So what is I guess, for lack of a better word, what is the prescription for somebody who's going down this route and trying to learn?
Well, this book, Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, this is designed to be an introduction to this medical doctor, and basically it is also autobiographical in that it narrates how I've been testing his medical discoveries in my own experience. So this is a good introduction to the subject. I only put terminal on this in the title, Josh, because in my experience, 99 out of 100 people will not look at any form of alternative modality, particularly one that's not commonly established, until either they have been sent home to die, or they've lost complete confidence in the medical system. So the name of the book essentially is just business targeting, right? I mean, the only person who's going to pick the book up is essentially somebody who's been sent home to die. So I am told by the people who read this that it is the best introduction to Dr. Hamer's medical discoveries in an accessible, easy to read language. Okay. And this is the first of a 500 plus book series. I'm writing one book on each disease. It's what I'm calling the Misdiagnosis book series. So I'm going to have, my next book is breast cancer is a misdiagnosis, and then lung cancer is a misdiagnosis, and then colorectal cancer is a misdiagnosis, and skin cancer is a misdiagnosis, and all of them, because they're all a misdiagnosis, right? They're a misdiagnosis because they are only interpreting symptoms of a problem through an incorrect filter without understanding the cause of that problem or its biological purpose, which is most important.
Right. So I think you need another book with another title that's kind of aimed at people like me, skeptics, or people who have already seen allopathic failure over and over again. That's how I got into doing what I'm doing now. It's how the podcast came to be. I watched allopathic failure over and over and over again, and I swore I wouldn't fall into the same traps that I had seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Same here, Josh. Right, which is why it's called. It's a misdiagnosis, right? Terminal cancer is a misdiagnosis. Breast cancer is a misdiagnosis. These are all when you do not understand what causes a change in our biology, right, or why our biology changes, then how can you convince me? At least I have a questioning mind, and I think critically. If you can't tell me what causes a problem or why it happens, then frankly, I'm personally not interested in your explanation for why you think the way it is, because if you don't understand the cause or the biological purpose of why something happens, then you have no expertise to explain the subject. But that's the nature of the medical systems that we live in, Josh, right?
All right, so I came across another situation, a book by Dr. Sarlo, I believe it was, and it was healing back pain, healing lower back pain, maybe specifically. And it was basically going into how most back pain is psychosomatic in its nature, and it's not actually from a physical injury. Have you come across different areas of research like that you're aligned with?
I mean, before I found Dr. Hamer, I looked at everything, Josh, right? I mean, back pain. I had chronic back pain for 15 years. I mean, before I discovered Dr. Hamer, I spent between 1 to 2 months a year laying on my bedroom floor, essentially outside my bathroom toilet, because I had to sort of drag myself on my hands and knees to get to the bathroom because I couldn't walk. And I suffered that for 15 years, right? Now, according to Dr. Hamer, the lower back is affected by what he called a central self-worth conflict, right? So it's something that's core to your values or to your life that basically affects the lower back. And I suffered that problem. And it was very frustrating, right? Because every year, at least twice a year, I would be in debilitating pain, the inability to get up off the floor. And now I can switch that pain off like a light switch. So the pain, if I wake up in the morning with lower back pain, typically within 15 to 30 minutes, I can switch that pain off and I no longer have to experience that type of debilitating pain. I've not studied this particular doctor's work. I don't need to study any more doctor's work, Josh, right? Because Dr. Hamer found the life cause and the solution to the change of every cell in our body. And this is not only from physical problems like back pain or cancer or arthritis or osteoporosis or you name your polio or name whatever condition you want. But he spent the last 10 years of his life helping children with Down syndrome to fully recover their health.
So there was cases and proven that he was reversing Down syndrome.
Spent 10 years doing it, yeah, before he died.
And this is part of the, this part of the research has been buried and censored?
It's all been buried and censored, Josh. The problem is that if everybody could learn to heal themselves, as I do, right, there would be there would be no medical systems. Dr. Hamer said that he estimated that 95% of symptom-based treatment modalities would go out of business, right? You still need emergency medicine, car crashes, shootings, those are, you still, cosmetic medicine would still survive. People still want breast augmentation and, facelifts and all of that sort of stuff, right? So that would also survive. But all of the oncology and all of the specialists who sort of take one little piece of the biology, I mean, they'd all be out of business, right? Which is why this has all been suppressed, right? Because if these medical discoveries are allowed to surface, Dr. Hamer believed that, so the medical system, he had an extraordinary life. He spent over 3 years in prison. He had 12 attempts on his life. They tried to put him in a mental institution 75 times in a 30-year period in order to prevent him from, in the last prison sentence, he spent 2.5 years. He was arrested in Spain and he was convicted in France because a French doctor had learned his medical discoveries and was treating French patients with Dr. Hamer's medical discoveries. Dr. Hamer had never met the doctor or his patients, and he was arrested in Spain and extradited to France and put in prison for 3 years for conspiracy to practice medicine because a doctor had got hold of his medical discoveries and was working with his patients with Dr. Hamer's medical discoveries, and Dr. Hamer had never met the patients or the doctor. He was put in a high security prison for conspiracy to practice medicine because they'd taken away his medical license and he'd never met the doctor or the patients because they could not let this information get out. Otherwise, he puts them out of business, right?
Well, I've said it for years. If I get a hole in my arm or a broken arm, I'll go to the ER for that. That's great. But for
100%.
anything else, I'm steering clear at all costs.
100%. I totally agree.
So you said he died in 2007. What was his cause of death, if you don't mind me asking?
So they removed his medical license in 1986. Now this causes what we call a territorial loss conflict that basically affects the coronary arteries and the bronchi. Okay. Now, Dr. Hamer was obviously very keen to get his medical license back. He made a final application to get his medical license back, I think late 2016 or 2017 or something, right? Of course, they refused to give him his medical license back. He resolved that conflict he knew he was never going to get his medical license back, right? And by this time, I think he was 84 or something, right? From what I understand, resolving that conflict of knowing that he would never get his medical license back basically created a critical life crisis. And I think, is it a heart attack or something that he had?
Country was that he was getting his license back for? In Germany?
Well, I mean, he was originally in Germany, right? I mean, he spent after he got let out of prison in 2006. They had arrest warrants for him all over Spain and Austria and France and Germany. So he ended up spending, I think the last 11 years or so of his life living in Norway because Norway didn't have an extradition treaty with Europe. So he could live in Norway without continually getting harassed and arrested. So he actually died in Sandalford in Norway.
He was born in Germany?
Born in Germany, yeah.
Kind of just post-World War II then?
5, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
But even before. Wow.
1935, I think he was born.
I'll definitely do my digging and
like that.
check him out as well as reading your book.
Extraordinary life, Josh. Extraordinary. Yeah. He used to, when he presented his medical discoveries, he was the head of cancer research for a division of Munich University. And after he had this testicular cancer, when he presented the university, basically in Germany, they have a law that if a postdoctoral thesis is presented by law, they have to either prove or disprove it. The Germans are very structured and very systematic, right? And when he presented his thesis to be proved or disproved, the university refused to test his medical discoveries, right? So he took them to court, and the court ordered the university to test, to prove or disprove these in accordance with the law. And the university basically in court said, we do not want to test Dr. Hamer's medical discoveries. And the court said, why? We do not want to know whether Dr. Hamer is right or not. So they paid a fine and said, we're not testing his medical discoveries. However, Dr. Hamer used to monitor. Dr. Hamer knew the elites, not only had they tested and checked his medical discoveries, but they were actually using his medical discoveries within the elites. He used to collect all government data of cancer death rates within different communities, and within the elites communities, the cancer death rates were like 20 in 100,000, and the rest of the world it was 2.5 to 3,000 per 100,000. But basically, what they did is they suppressed these medical discoveries for people like you and I, but they used those medical discoveries for themselves. So obviously, the cancer death rates within the elites went, and they just made sure that we never got access to them. So my little passion in life basically is to try and get these medical discoveries out to the masses in an accessible format, in a way that the man in the street can read and understand them, so that they can start using these extraordinary medical discoveries in order to start learning to heal themselves in the same way that I have.
Well, that's no little passion, sir. That's quite the task. And I guess he was up against Rockefeller and allopathic medicine, and you yourself are up against the modern day version, the Fauci's and the...
Oh,
yeah.
I get censored into oblivion, Josh. I promise you. I mean, I've been kicked off of pretty much every platform there is you can think of, right? I've kicked off or censored or shadow banned or whatever. I scream from the rooftops, but for the most part, I scream into an empty chamber, right? Because nobody can hear me, because I'm either kicked off the platform or I'm shadow banned, so that they make sure that nobody hears it, right?
Yeah, you're not alone. I've faced my fair share of it, and just on one subject, just that one procedure, that one intervention that everybody was almost mandated to have in the last few years, and even the experts, the Michael Yeadons, the people that were speaking out against it, that had the professional, everything legitimate on their side, they too were being completely censored and squashed and taken off of other people's networks. And no,
I mean, I was invited to join the American Frontline Doctors during this period of time, right? So again, I witnessed and I experienced all of the the censorship that went on during that period of time. So I mean, I'm thoroughly familiar with it. I'll give you an example of what is possible for you to learn to do. Right, I'll give you one of my own case studies. Right, in 2019, I got cancer in my jaw, and basically by the time that the program had fully run its course, it basically destroyed my jaw, and all of my teeth fell out on my upper jaw on the left side. Basically, I then went through a reconstructive surgery, a 5-hour reconstructive surgery with a bone graft and implants put in my jaw. After I had that surgery, I learned to switch the pain off from that surgery. So I basically had, after the first day of the surgery, where I took 2 painkillers, on the second day of the surgery, I switched that pain off, and it's not so difficult, Josh, right? The biological purpose of pain is to stop you from using a part of your body so that it has the time to heal, right? So next time, when you cut your finger, right, if you don't use it, you'll have no pain, right? If you start, doing the dishes or, mowing the lawn or something like that, and they go ba-dum, 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 just saying to you, don't use it, it's broken. Let it heal, and once it's healed, you can use it again, right? Now, I had no teeth, Josh, right? When my jaw started going ba-dum, 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 I thought, oh, okay. The purpose of pain is to stop you from using it, right? I've got no teeth, Josh, right? And I'm like, whoa, okay, I've got no teeth. So then I had a stern discussion with my subconscious mind, and I said, subconscious mind, I know the biological purpose of pain is to stop you using a part of the body so that it can heal, right? Now, I've got no teeth, I can't use it. I'll give it a time to heal. Switch the pain off. Bang, pain just switched off, right? Now, I had that bridge put in September last year. I woke up one morning. There's another long story, but I woke up with that bridge in my mouth, right? The bridge had fallen out. So then I ended up going in January, like 4 weeks ago, to have a second reconstructive surgery. And this time I had to have a bone graft in my sinuses. And this time the previous implants were 5 millimeters by 3 millimeters. This time, the implants were industrial size, and they put in 10 millimeters by 4 millimeter implants in my jaw, right? And when I was coming back from the surgery, I thought I'd try and get ahead of the program, right? So whilst I had the anesthetic in my jaw, I said, right, I had another stern discussion with my subconscious mind. I said, subconscious mind, I know I've just had another surgery on my jaw, and it's going to get painful when the anesthetic wears off. The purpose of the pain is to stop me from using it. I've got no teeth. Do not switch the pain program on, right? And I've just gone through 4 weeks of healing with a major reconstruction on my jaw with zero pain, okay? Now, in the last surgery, after I slept for between 20 to 22 hours a day, all right, after this surgery. Pain-free because I switched the pain off, right? But I slept for 20 to 22 hours a day. Now, I did some research on why does nature shut you down when you've got a broken jaw? And it's basically it's like when your jaw is broken, nature assumes that you can't eat, right? So what it does is it puts you into hibernation, because if you can't consume, you shouldn't burn, right? So I got ahead of it again, and I said, right, okay, subconscious mind, another stern discussion, Josh, right? And I said, right, subconscious mind, I know the biological purpose of chronic fatigue when my jaw is broken is to stop me from burning when I can't consume, right? I will be able to consume, through fresh fruit juices and soft food, I'll eat on this side of my jaw, the good side, without using the broken side of my jaw. So do not switch on the chronic fatigue program, right? And I've just gone through, last time on the first surgery, 3 weeks, I slept for 20 to 22 hours a day. I've just gone through this surgery and I've slept for 8 hours a day. No fatigue, no pain, right? So when you understand biological purpose of why nature does what it does, you can learn to manage and manipulate it so you don't have to suffer from pain, don't have to suffer from chronic fatigue. You can switch these biological cancer, any damn thing, you can switch these programs off like a light switch. And it's an extraordinary body of knowledge, and it's a gift to humanity. You just have to learn. You just have to go and spend. It's a new life skill to learn, Josh. Right? You should have to put the effort in to go and learn it. And I promise you, it is mind blowing, Josh. Mind blowing.
So the power of self-talk, and actually maybe perhaps analyzing and interpreting the voice within us that's already going on that we're not aware of. So the same thing as somebody with low self-worth, or somebody who has been conditioned and has had some traumatic event in childhood and has carried this voice with them throughout their life, maybe even into adulthood. Once they can analyze it, interpret it, and then reaffirm that that is not true, that the true nature of things is that they are worthwhile, that they are powerful, then that's the switch.
I had in December of 2023, my mum died from the mandated medications, right? And I went into deep depression, right? And I got to April of 2024, and I was still in deep depression, Josh, and I couldn't pull myself out of it, right? Which is really strange. Anyway, I called my study buddy, and I said, I need help. I've been in depression for 3.5 months and I can't pull myself out of it. And he said, Danny, just monitor the unwanted negative thoughts that are coming, and it will lead you in a direction of the problem you've got to solve. All of the unwanted negative thoughts, Josh, were coming up about my dad, right? Now, when my mum died, my parents had been married for 56 years, right? They had 3 children by the age of 20. They were grandparents at the age of 36, great-grandparents by the age of 61, and they were essentially conjoined twins, right? And completely codependent, right? Now, I've been telling my subconscious mind for my lifetime that if one of them jumped in the hole, the other one would essentially jump in after them, right? I couldn't see a way that they would be able to live independently without each other. So when my mum died, my subconscious mind was doing what I programmed it to do. It was not only mourning the loss of my mum, it was also mourning the loss of my dad, even though my dad hadn't died, because that's what I programmed it to do, Josh, right? Well, I said, if one goes in the hole, the other one's going to go in after it, right? So the penny dropped when I started monitoring these unwanted negative thoughts, right? And then I said, oh, it's my dad. Okay. Oh, now I get it, right? Subconscious mind is mourning the loss of my dad, which is why I was in such a deep depression. So there's this little trick you can use where just before you sleep at nighttime, when you start to get sleepy, your conscious mind starts to quieten down, and it opens a door for you to be able to reprogram your subconscious mind, right? So just as I was getting sleepy on a Tuesday night, I said, right, subconscious mind, do you know I've been telling you all of these years that when one of my parents passes, the other one will follow? Well, I was wrong, okay? My mum has died, my dad is still alive and he's fit and fine, and I want to enjoy whatever time he has left on this earth, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years, who knows, right? I cannot enjoy that time with my dad if I'm in a deep depression. So switch off the depression. I woke up on Wednesday morning in a state of euphoria. I woke up as though the world had been lifted from my shoulders. I essentially switched off that deep depression like a light switch. When you understand the cause of a problem, you have the ability to be able to essentially manipulate and switch that program off like a light switch. Exactly the same that I did with the depression that I experienced, or with the pain or the chronic fatigue programs. When you understand at the cause of a problem and its biological purpose, you will find that it is extraordinary what you can do in order to both manipulate and change the direction of those programs. And when you learn how to do it, I can't tell you, Josh, this is probably the most extraordinary, spontaneous, cathartic healing experience I've ever gone through. When I went from being in deep depression to essentially switching that off and waking up in a state of euphoria, it was just mind-blowing. And these are skills that can be learned. And there's no black art, black magic, whatever, right? You just have to understand what causes changes in your biology or in your mental state, and what is the biological purpose of that change. And once you understand those two fundamentals, you'll be surprised at the magic that you can perform.
Yep, you just directly hit on some of the most medicinal / relevational moments in my life. And it was exactly when you're talking about right before you go to sleep. And for myself in the morning when I wake up, the same thing.
That's right.
The same exact thing.
Same thing. Just when you're coming out of
REM sleep.
of a deep sleep. Yeah, once you get out of REM sleep and you're just getting into that waking state, and you've got two wide open doors, right, that you can get in and rewire your subconscious mind. And it's really not that difficult to do, right? It takes work, obviously, right? Learning any new skill in life takes work. But when you learn how to use those windows, the combination of what Dr. Hamer has given us, Josh, essentially, it's a Google map of our entire biology, right? Now, when you learn to take that Google map and use the power of your subconscious mind in order to be able to manipulate, manage, switch off, or trigger spontaneous cathartic healing, it's truly mind-blowing. You can't explain it, right? I mean, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah, you've definitely knocked this one out of the park with me personally. There's been other people that have taught very similar things or had very similar line of thinking, whether they're labeling it manifestation or whether they're labeling it creating the reality that you want to live by enjoying it now, being grateful for it now, and engaging the act as if it's already happened during those two windows. I can't wait to read your book and see how this relates to personal health and these ailments.
I'm not dressing it up or anything, Josh, right? I mean, I have a very simple approach in life, right? You have a problem, you work it out and learn to solve it, right? That's it, right? I'm not trying to sort of sugarcoat it and dress it up in any fancy uniform or anything, right? It's just basically learning how you're function biologically, how life's experience changes your biology, and how you manage that madness just by understanding those simple factors of how your biology functions and how you can use the power of your subconscious mind in order to be able to manage and manipulate those biological programs to solve life problems. And that's it, right? Nothing fancy at all.
So does everything happen for a reason?
Yes, everything. Nature in our lifetime will never make a single mistake, not once. The only problem is, Josh, is that we do not understand why or how our biology changes, and we have no clue. You know, we spend most of our time taking pharmaceutical drugs in order to suppress those symptoms so we can bury our head in the sand and not attempt to understand or solve the cause of the problem.
Is there malice? Is there malice in the pharmaceutical industry in itself and the entire practice of allopathia?
Yes.
Wow. So what's your advice to individuals that have listened to this podcast and are just now becoming aware or open to the possibility that they have this much power, that they can harness this power, that they can distinguish fact from fiction, that there is actually something to be learned here, and obviously get your book?
The approach I take to everything in life, Josh, is I do not believe anything that anybody tells me, right? And you should not believe a single word that I've told you, especially in the health space, mate. I'm like, there is so much bullshit, right? And there's so much smoke and mirrors, and I mean, everybody, my solution is the Holy Grail, right? Everybody's solution is the Holy Grail, right? You know, the only way that you can get conviction is through personal experience, okay? My honest and best suggestion, they don't believe a single word I've said, If you think that what I've said is interesting, great. Go into a process of investigation and discovery with a very high degree of skepticism, but an open mind. And when you start on a journey, I have something that I call the cathartic healing conviction curve, right? I had my first subconscious cathartic healing experience in 2012. And it took me probably over a decade. I mean, what happens is each time I have cathartic healing experience, it increases my conviction. Okay, it works for that, right? Works for this. I don't know if it works for that. Then I have another cathartic healing experience, right? Okay, it works for that as well. I don't know if it works for that, right? So what I do is through a series of personal experiences, I build my conviction increases and my skepticism reduces, right? And over time, you can build your conviction through a series of personal experiences. That's the only way you can build conviction in anything is through a series of experiences. Otherwise, don't believe anything anybody tells you, including, and especially me, right? I mean, who am I? Yeah, I'm random venture capital investor, right? I'm not even a doctor, I'm not even a naturopath, whatever. I mean, some joker who lives in Bombay in India, right? I mean, why would you listen to me for? Yeah, crazy.
Feeling is understanding. And the best advice that I've gotten is very similar and along those lines. And it's go and feel, go and do, experience.
That's right.
Danny, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man and you're there with your wife and enjoy the time you have there together before you're heading back to Mumbai.
That's
which
right.
is on my bucket list, by the way. One of the places that is absolutely...
Now you have to come,
Yeah.
because you've got a buddy there now, right? And I will give you the royal guided tour of Bombay, Josh. I mean, it's an extraordinary place. I would strongly recommend anybody to come and visit. I mean, it's... Anyway, you come, I'll come and experience it. Don't listen to me, right?
I've only heard the amazing things, so absolutely one of those things I'd like to experience, and I'm looking forward.
Yes. If you want to start your process of exploration on this subject, what I've done, I have my home base is my name, my website. It's just danny-carroll.com. There are two particular pages on my website that are worth checking out, and that's number one. Over the last 20 years, Josh, I have put together a resource page on my website that will help you to navigate around the community of these medical discoveries. It's taken me years, right, to put that resource page together. It will save you a truckload of time navigating the different resources in the industry.
And you have a newsletter, correct?
I have a newsletter, yeah. So you can, if you want to follow me, you can. If you go to any page on my website, you can sign up and join my email list that I send out pretty much every week, information of different resources that you can follow, etc., etc. If you check out the featured on page on my website, put a ton of content I run. Last year I set up a training course called the BioSwitch, which is how you switch off all of these biological programs. I put a ton of content up on the featured on page on my website, and it will give you a good introduction as to how you can use these medical discoveries in combination with the power of your subconscious mind in order to trigger spontaneous cathartic healing, which is a really cool trick to learn.
Probably the most important one in the...
Amazing, mate. I'm telling you, it still gives me goosebumps every time I do it. And I never get bored of it.
Well, thank you for your work. Thank you for passing this forward and for all the time and the effort that you put into it, because I'm sure that not just myself, but many people are going to benefit from that. We're all grateful.
Just a quick heads up, my next book that I'm going to be publishing in hopefully March or April It's called Breast Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. If you'd like to read that before it's published, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to share a copy of it for you to read.
Awesome. DannyCarroll.com. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Josh. Thank you for hosting me.
And that's awesome.